and I think I do, you're chanting, he's a weirdo. Which means, man, I love you, Philly. Which means, if you're chanting, he's a weirdo, then you heard of my good friend and our next vice president, Tim Walz. Because Tim Walz, in his beautiful Midwestern plain-spoken way, he summed up J.D. Vance the best. He's a weirdo.
What's up, family? Welcome back to another episode of Look at the Material podcast. I'm your host, BK, and today we're going to talk about how Governor Tim Walz gave the Democratic Party a winning messaging strategy with just one word: weird.
We do not like what has happened where we can't even go to Thanksgiving dinner with our uncle because you end up in some weird fight that is unnecessary. and I think bringing back people together, well, it's true. These guys are just weird. And it's, you know, they're running for He-Man Women Haters Club or something. That's what they go at. That's not what people are interested in.
These guys are just weird. That's who they are. So it isn't much else. But don't lift these guys up like they're sometimes the heroes. Everybody in this room knows, I know it as a teacher. The fascists depend on fear. The fascists depend on us going back. But we're not afraid of weird people. We're a little bit creeped out, but we're not afraid.
Let's look at the material. So I was already going to make this video because about a week ago, I saw Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota on MSNBC, and he's talking about how Republican policy, it's not just bad policy, it's strange. It's weird. It's policy that everyday Americans, and particularly small town Americans, are not concerned about. A lot of people were kind of shocked that this word weird caught on like wildfire seemingly overnight.
I don't think Kamala Harris is going to pick anyone as weird and creepy as J.D. Vance.
Frankly, J.D. Vance, just dumb Vance, is pretty weird.
It's not just a weird style that he brings. It's that this leads to weird policies.
They're just weird.
Donald Trump and his weirdo running mate.
More extreme, more weird, more erratic.
The agenda, the way they talk to people, the way they address people, it is bizarre. It's weird. It is weird.
Well, it's just plain weird. I mean, that's the box you put that in.
Project 2025 and the Republican agenda is and has always been to deregulate the country, to defund education, to fund the military, to fund the police, to ban abortion, to ban books, to inspect the genitals of children, to make sure that there are no trans kids in sports. Very unpopular policy positions when we look at the broader electorate. And I personally believe that this weird messaging is more impactful because it's a mouthful to say threat to democracy. It's a mouthful to say and explain fascist regime or talk about authoritarian government and dictatorship. Words that average Americans are not necessarily intimate with. And so it doesn't hit the same as weird. We all know a weird ass nigga, right? We all know someone who is just a little bit off, like can't really put your finger on it. Just strange. And I want to play that interview clip for you here just to show you how effective the messaging is, how brilliant of a storyteller Tim Walz is, and how comfortable he actually makes the average American.
People like J.D. Vance know nothing about small town America. My town had 400 people in it, 24 kids in my graduating class, 12 were cousins, and he gets it all wrong. It's not about hate. It's not about collapsing in. The golden rule there is mind your own damn business. Their policies are what destroyed rural America. They've divided us. They're in our exam rooms. They're telling us what books to read. And I think what Kamala Harris knows is bringing people together around the shared values, strong public schools, strong labor unions that create the middle class, healthcare that's affordable and accessible. Those are the things. You look what they're talking about. They went right to division. They did not give us a plan on health care. Donald Trump talked about infrastructure. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris built bridges, built roads. So I think this is going back to the bread and butter, getting away from this division. We do not like what has happened where we can't even go to Thanksgiving dinner with our uncle because you end up in some weird fight that is unnecessary. and I think bringing back people together, well, it's true. These guys are just weird. And it's, you know, they're running for He-Man Women Haters Club or something. That's what they go at. That's not what people are interested in. interested in. And there is angst because robber barons like J.D. Vance and Donald Trump gutted the Midwest, told us we didn't do that. They talk about private schools. Where in the heck are you going to find a private school in a town of 400? Those are public schools. Those are great teachers that are out there making a difference and gave us an opportunity to succeed. That angst that J.D. Vance talks about in Hillbilly Elegy, none of my hillbilly cousins went to Yale, and none of them went on to be venture capitalists or whatever. It's not who people really are. So I think that message doesn't resonate. You saw it yesterday. The energy out here exploded. We all broke fundraising records, but that's not what I look at. Door knocks are full. Phone banks are full. People are talking about what's possible. We are finally on offense about an America where we're all together. So good. Have Orban down to Florida. The vice president will come out here and stand in a Planned Parenthood. She stands in a Planned Parenthood clinic in St. Paul. That's what people want to see.
I think in one interview, this interview in particular, he solidified his position, at least in the top 3 of vice presidential picks. And furthermore, Josh Shapiro, who I lovingly called Shapoopy, was a big stinker. He seemed to have the arrogance of a 2016 Hillary, just absolutely confident that he was going to be the pick, and actually turned a pro-Harris rally into a Shapiro for VP party. I've seen a couple insiders mention that his appearances seem to be showboaty and to be more about him solidifying that position than about boosting Harris. And as the whispers became more loud that Shapiro was looking like he was going to be the pick, the internet ripped him apart, dug into his background, found out that he served in the IDF, that he called Palestinians barbarians. And actually, when he was asked about a paper that he wrote referring to the barbaric nature of Palestinians, he kind of shrugged off the question.
Supporting a two-state solution now. Can you kind of just talk about that evolution?
Something I wrote when I was 20? Is that what you're talking about? I was 20.
It seems to be evident that the Harris ticket is very tapped in to social media and possibly saw some short threads that people were writing about Shapiro. But that kind of leads me to just the overall appeal of Walz, more so than the stinkiness of Shapoopy. Walz is an all-American type of candidate who represents small town USA and reminds you of your favorite coach or teacher or grandpa. And I think this is a look that complements the Democratic Party that is often touted as the ivory tower of elites. A lot of Yale grads, a lot of Ivy League grads, a lot of law school grads, and just people who are seemingly out of touch with the everyday American. If you compare that to a Trump-Vance ticket where a lot of rural Americans, a lot of small town folks do support Republicans in general based on whatever affinity group they align with. And all-American Walz is a perfect complement to Kamala. She didn't go to an Ivy League, but she went to a prestigious HBCU, prosecutor, law school grad, etc., etc. I've already seen so much wholesome content come out about Walz. He was a former teacher for 20 years. He was a football coach who actually led a team that was 0-27 to a state championship in 3 years.
Geography teacher.
Mankato West High School?
That's correct.
Is that right? You were also...
Yeah, go ahead. I was just going to add, because I hope you were going to add that in, the football coach.
Oh, that's what I want to ask about.
Well, thank you.
Were you a position coach, offensive guy?
I was a defensive coordinator.
Okay. What'd you run?
Yeah, we ran a 4-4 where we read guards at the time. I had really good athletes and good linebackers.
How are your corners?
They were good. That was an age when I was coaching that, you know, it was unusual to see a 2,500 to 3,000 yard passer on the other side, but it was starting to come along.
So they were running the ball a lot.
Yeah. I appreciate you bringing this up.
These guys were crowding the box, making sure they
That's exactly it. And our guards, you know, because in high school, if you pull a guard, it pretty much know where the ball's going. And if you can teach kids to do that.
Like student body right, student body left, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Everyone is tuning
Thank you for not allowing the yearbook to close on this chapter of my life.
I do think it's important. It
is important. And I have to tell people this. So look, I did 24 years in the military. I was teaching, and then I started running for Congress. I'm absolutely convinced, and people have told me this, no, it's because you won that state championship.
Really?
You guys won that. Well, we were 0-27. When I took the job, they said, well, we're kind of struggling. We were 0-27. But I had some other coaches I worked with who were great guys, and we said, this is nonsense. Let's just turn this thing around. 3 years later, state champion. Now they're the state powerhouse.
He's a veteran. He tells the story of how his daughter's name is Hope because 8 years into his marriage with his wife, they had tried everything, and finally the IVF worked and they were able to conceive their 2 children, which is perfect because JD Vance goes after childless cat people and attacks IVF and attacks abortion rights and just reproductive rights in general. And like when he interacts with his family, you can tell he really loves them.
And then Hope gets to pick something new,
I think we're gonna go do the slingshot.
which I don't know what it is, and they're keeping it from me. But then we're going to go get some food, corn dog,
I'm vegetarian.
turkey then. And
Turkey's
then,
meat.
Not in Minnesota, turkey's special. And we will go do some of those things and report back.
Oh my god! Oh my god! Woo!
Yes!
That was good. Good job, Dad.
Oh, thanks, Hope. All right, Minnesota, it's worth it. Woo! Wow, that is wild.
That was pretty cool.
And just because Walz isn't an Ivy League grad or didn't go to law school, it by no means that he's a scrub. In his first term, Walz signed into law universal school meals, stronger labor protections, cannabis legalization recreationally, stronger LGBTQ plus protections, paid sick leave, 100% clean energy by 2030, reproductive rights, $1 billion for housing. He's a proponent for gun safety, and he cut child poverty by 1/3. He also was the faculty advisor for the first gay-straight alliance at his school. That is not an exhaustive list, but it's a great sign because Tim Walz barely had a Democratic majority in his state. There were more Republicans in his state than there were Democrats, and he was able to actually not just talk about these progressive pieces of legislation, but actually sign them into law. He has a lot of charisma, and I've already seen all the memes and all the content rolling in by the minute. The last thing I'll say about Governor Walz is that I think that his strategy in regards to embracing more progressive messaging and more progressive legislation should be adopted by the modern Democratic Party.
And for one thing, don't ever shy away from our progressive values. One person's socialism is another person's neighborliness. Just do the damn work. They scream socialism. We just build roads and we build schools and we build prosperity into this.
Leaning into this ultra liberal label or this socialist label and kind of shrugging it off as, well, if socialism is feeding the children of Minnesota's bellies, then call me whatever you want. Instead of moving to the right and saying, hey, look, we're not socialist, and adopting Republican framework and conservative framework, lean into the name calling and say, hey, well, if I want women to have autonomy over their body, if that makes me socialist, fine, so be it.
You've legalized recreational marijuana, you passed universal background checks on guns, you expanded LGBTQ protections, you implemented tuition-free college for low-income Minnesotans, there's free breakfast and lunch for school kids. Do you think your record is an asset to the ticket, or would it risk fueling Trump's attacks as you being a big government liberal?
What a monster. Kids are eating and having full bellies so they can go learn, and women are making their own healthcare decisions. And we're a top 5 business state, and we also rank in the top 3 of happiness. Look, they're going to label whatever they're going to label. He's going to roll it out, mispronounce names, to try and make the case. So if that's where they want to label me, I'm more than happy to take the label.
Stand firm, stand on business. Get out of the right-wing framing, like what's happening with immigration. The Biden administration conceded a lot of points to the conservatives, and essentially the ACLU has said that the Biden-Harris immigration policy that was proposed is identical to the immigration policy that Trump adopted or was seeking to adopt. They use this move to the right as a way to dispel the ultra-liberal / socialist communist label that is just ridiculous. And now we have people cheering on a bill that the GOP champions on immigration. Nasty work. Tim Walz, with the word weird, gave Democrats a vehicle for easier messaging to the average voter. Americans can comprehend weird. Americans distance ourselves and other ourselves from the weirdos. And so, yes, he's a threat to democracy, Trump, Vance, the like. Yes, they are a threat to our rights, to public safety, to public liberties, but the messaging on that is clunky. There's a lot of words that are spilling out and they start to sound like a word salad, and you've just lost the American public. I don't know if y'all saw that video of Aiden Ross, like finding out, researching in real time what fascism even meant.
Does a fascist mean? It means you are a far right authorization ultra analyst, political ideology movement characterized by dictator leadership, centralized autocracy, militarism, forcible suppression of opposition. So I don't know what that means, right? I swear to God. I don't know what the fuck a fascism is. I don't know what the fuck that is. Benito Mussolini and Giovanni Gentile and Jason Stanley. Like, who the fuck are these people, bro? Never heard in my fucking life. What is an example of a fascist? Yo!
I would say that that's kind of the average American, unfortunately. But when you shift from this elitist kind of ivory tower, flowery language to common vernacular like weird, you now have a movement. You now have messaging that the average American can communicate to their friends, their families, their colleagues. They may not want to sit and hear you talk about the destruction of the democratic process and authoritarian fascism and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. When you can draw a connection and say, can you imagine Trump going home and petting his dog? Can you imagine Trump laughing with friends by the fire? Can you imagine him gingerly picking up his grandchildren and telling them a bedtime story? You can't, right? When you have rumors about JD Vance fucking couches and people believe it, do you have a normal person? No.
I tell you, I can't wait to debate the guy. That is, if he's willing to get off the couch and show up. So, you see what I did there?
Overall, I think that Kamala and the Harris campaign will see a boost from this pick, especially this pick being ahead of the DNC. The memes are rolling in, the enthusiasm is at an all-time high, and it seems as though the Harris campaign is putting hope in the average voter that criticized her alignment with Biden. You're starting to see people have a little bit more faith and hope and trust and enthusiasm because of how progressive Tim Walz is, and we'll see what they do moving forward, leading up to the DNC and leading up to November.
It's the great news. How often in 100 days do you get to change the trajectory of the world? How often in 100 days do you get to do something that's going to impact generations to come? And how often in the world do you make that bastard wake up afterwards and know that a black woman kicked his ass and sent him on the road? And you know that's something that guy's going to have to live with for the rest of his life. So I got to tell all of you, please, please do what you can.
I would love to hear what you guys think about this. Make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye.